This is episode 211 of the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. I want to welcome you guys back to another episode. We got a good amount of content that we're going to try to get through pretty quick today. So we got a few stories we're going to be talking about, an update with Zillow that might interest you, some real estate headaches that are being created right now from the baby boomers. We're also going to touch upon some of the world's largest real estate companies that just came out in a Forbes article. And then you guys have probably seen this one if you're at all tuned in to social media, a landlord that just went,
crazy.
Yeah, crazy. I was going to say ape, but I was like, I shouldn't.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not that he went crazy. He did what every landlord wants to do, but doesn't dare do. So, yeah, it's a little bit of that landlord porn.
Kind of like some of the people that don't have that filter. They just say whatever comes to their mind. This guy just did whatever he thought was appropriate without thinking about it. So we're going to get to all of that right after this.
Welcome to the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. And now your hosts, Stephen White and Eric Worrell.
All right. Before we get into today's content, I just did want to talk a little bit about, because I've been emailing you and sharing some stuff with Steve about this book I've been reading. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of it. The One Thing. You've heard of this, Steve?
I have. Clayton Keller?
Gary Keller.
Gary Keller.
Yeah. I don't know who Clayton Keller is.
He was a podcast guest of ours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was the Freedom Number, right?
No, that was Clayton something else.
Oh, wow. I'm a terrible podcast host. Never mind. Yeah, Gary Keller, of course. Keller Williams. I got you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I'm reading this book, I'm actually listening to it in my car rides mostly and riding my bike. And one of the things that he talks about a lot is working on your business instead of working in your business.
Right.
So if you're a landlord, property manager, you're a business owner. And I've really been taking a lot of what I'm learning from this book to heart, and highly recommend it if you guys haven't watched it yet or listened to that book. It's a really, really great book. And one of the things that I'm kind of taking away from it is trying to figure out where my priorities are at this week. So I'm kind of focusing on the one thing that I can improve, and what is like, rather than kind of multitasking all over the place and being distracted all the time with my time. Right. And the reason I'm bringing it up is our podcast advertiser this week is EarthClass Mail. You might have heard us the last few episodes talking about them. And I think it's an awesome opportunity for anybody who's looking to prioritize how they handle their time.
Sure.
Because time is money. I know it's cliche.
Yeah.
But if you are spending way too much time sorting mail or paying somebody too much money to sort mail for you, cash checks, and you're worried about what's happening to mail, is it stored properly, this service takes care of that for you. They have you can digitally scan your mail. They will they'll trash, or actually I should say what is it called? The
Shredder.
Shredder.
Yeah,
yes, thank you. They will shred your mail for you, and it's all done via the cloud, which is pretty cool. So if you guys want to check that out, you can go to earthclassmail.com. And if you use the promo code RENTPREP, just the same way it's spelled in this podcast title, you can get 8% off for the first 3 months. 10% off for the first 3 months and 8% off for the first 12 months. And that's on top of the 10% discount that you already get from doing the annual membership. So
yeah. If you're a business and you're shredding your documents, I know we do, and we spend about $100 a month for a service that comes in and picks up all of our shredding, stuff. So you're already saving money if you look at it just from that aspect.
Do you have to pay by the amount that you get shredded?
No.
It's just like a flat rate.
Yeah, you can pay over if you have we went through and purged a bunch of files, and so we had them come out. So you pay more for that, but typically it's just a flat rate, and it's close to $100 a month.
Yeah,
so it's a good deal right there alone.
Yeah, so start thinking about your priorities, and if decluttering the mail in your life is one of them, check out EarthClass Mail. So getting into in the news segment now. The first thing I wanted to talk about real quick is the fact that the U.S. Real estate website Zillow, I'm sure you guys have heard of it, they're going to be starting to post Canadian homes by the end of the year. And that was news to me. Apparently, they've been talking about this for a while, and now they said, we're doing it.
Canada's really moving the needle lately in the real estate industry. So not only this that came out, which is pretty big news in our industry, in the background check industry, Ontario, Canada has been all over headlines because they're passing new legislation about getting proper authorization to run background checks and criminal reports. So I feel like it's just something that we hear more and more of. And I think the market is definitely ripening in Canada.
Yeah. And I think there's probably a lot of landlords that are wondering how to handle with the marijuana being legalized across the country.
Yep.
How does that play into can you still like deny somebody because they smoke weed versus smoking cigarettes?
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff to consider, a lot of changes going on in Canada.
It'll be interesting if Canadian is the next, the Canadian market is the next frontier for American investors, real estate investors. I think the Rust Belt has pretty much dried up in terms of investments. I know in our local area, I would say it's turned a corner, no doubt.
Pittsburgh's also, definitely turned the corner. Rochester. But it'll be interesting. And you know what? I should share this in the show notes. I'll make a note right now. If you guys haven't ever seen, there's a Reddit thread, and it's a subreddit called Data is Beautiful. So what they have is they have a map of Canada, and it shows it in 4 different colors broken up by 25% of the population. So each like color represents 25% of the population of the map of Canada.
Okay.
So what you see is like pretty much like a tiny little bit around Toronto, like a line around Vancouver and towards the edge of the U.S. border. And then it kind of follows the Great Lakes going up towards like Montreal, if you guys are familiar with the map of Canada. And then like 99% of Canada's landmass like accounts for the other 25% of their population. So it's pretty crazy. Like it's insane how little like lowly populated most of Canada is. I mean, it's so, which is funny because my wife actually grew up in that part of Canada.
Really?
Yeah. She was like, I want to say like 2 hours north of Toronto.
Wow. No kidding. Yeah. It's crazy when you go through Ontario and seems pretty normal, pretty populated. But as soon as you start getting north of Toronto, man, it gets real sparse out there. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested, you can be checking out on Zillow some real estate in Canada sometime soon.
I'll be checking that out.
All right. This next article, this comes from CBS News, courtesy of Amy Peachy.
You know what's crazy? Until you showed me this article, I never even took into consideration that this is causing such a seller's market. Right now in the industry. I mean, myself going to buying a personal home, I couldn't tell you how many offers and how many bids, and it got denied. And then all of a sudden we saw the emergence of a new bidding system in our area that we had normally not ever seen, where they were having all bids need to be in by a certain date. And it was kind of like a silent auction style where you just put your bid in and hopefully you're the highest bidder. And so it's causing people to bid or to pay much more than the listing prices. I mean, it truly is a seller's market right now. And part of the reason is because these darn baby boomers won't get rid of their homes.
Yep.
So,
and this is according to the CBS News article, which I think I mentioned, Amy Peachy, Picchi. Hi, Amy. So we got this article here, and she says that the pinching the real estate market is because Americans over 65 has the highest home ownership rate of any generation. Almost 80% of seniors own their homes, compared with 35% of Americans under the age of 35, which sometimes stats can be misleading. So when I hear under the age of 35, it's not a range. So is this considering people like your son who's 13 or my son who's 9 months old almost?
Shame on him for not already owning property.
Well, he's lazy. Yeah. I've been trying to, in the mornings, I sit him down and I give him the lazy talk and I tell him, it's time to start pulling your own weight around here.
You read him Rich Dad Poor Dad every night for bedtime story.
Yeah, and you don't want to get it by now. You don't want to put too much pressure on him, but he's going to be one soon. Right. It's just, I don't want like a lazy turd running around the house.
I hear you, man.
Yeah. But this article goes on to just explain that a lot of this housing shortage that we have is due to the fact that baby boomers are not selling. And I guess originally analysts had predicted that they would be selling by this point, but many of them are working longer into their careers and life expectancy is increasing. So the Americans who are over 65 are projected to be the fastest growing segment of the workforce over the next 6 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. While the overall workforce will increase 5% in that time, those from 65 to 74 are forecasted to grow by 55%.
I wonder what impact reverse mortgages have had on this.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Instead of selling your house, you got the option now to do a reverse mortgage, take your equity out of the home. You're forfeiting it to the bank, obviously. You might have some family members that are pretty upset when you do pass and there's no estate to leave them or anything. But what it means for older Americans, obviously, is that they can stay in their home longer and not have to go into an assisted living care or something like that. So that's got to have some sort of an impact on it as well. That means they're staying in their homes instead of selling them now.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of things. This article also mentions the fact that millennials are staying longer. And so maybe there's some sort of pressure on these these baby boomers to keep their homes because their adult children are still living with them. And I think there's one other aspect to it where I used to actually work with a assisted care company at a previous life. And there seems to be a changing shift in the mentality of nursing homes, right? I think there's more people that want to figure out some way to provide care for their parents without putting them in a nursing home.
Yeah.
And if it's assisted living, or excuse me, if it's having a home care aide, somebody coming to your house, that again is somebody who's not selling their house because they're having support come to their house.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So there is that little bit of, shortage here. I'll see if I can find the other stat that was interesting in here.
Thanks a lot, baby boomers.
Yeah.
Because of you, I had to pay not only full price for my home, but I paid over the asking. So thank you.
Let's see. It said in May of this year, 9.8 million Americans over 65 were working, the highest number recorded since 1948.
Wow.
Older workers have been remaining in the workforce in greater numbers since the 1990s, when in earlier decades, the typical 65-plus workforce held stable at about 3 million annually. And then boomers also say they intend to stay put. In a homeowner survey conducted last year by Realtor.com, 85% of them said they didn't plan on selling their home in the next year, compared with 59% of millennials who are homeowners. So with boomers remaining in their homes, that removes about 33 million properties from the market, Realtor.com estimated. So that's significant considering that 5.5 million existing homes were sold last year. So 33 million properties are not going to go to the market. And they said that only 5.5 million existing homes were sold last year. So not including new builds. That's pretty telling right there.
I would say, at least in our market, I don't know about yours, those of you who are listening, but that would probably sum up our market.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
all right. Well, let's move forward. We have an article here from Samantha Scharf on Forbes.com, and it's the world's largest real estate companies in 2018. So I'm not going to read too much into this article, and anything that we're ever mentioning on the podcast, you can go to rentprep.com. In the header, you can find the podcast link, and you can check out the show notes. We'll have links to all these resources, but
I know what stood out to you on this one.
Oh, yeah. We'll go through the top three. So the number one largest company is Brookfield Asset Management, which is in Canada, and their market value is $38.91 billion. They diversified real estate portfolio. So the one that really caught my attention was the number two. They're called American Tower Corporation, United States. So that name probably gave it away, right,
Yeah,
Steve?
they own cell phone towers. And the first person I think of, Jay Massey.
Yeah. If you guys have never heard our podcast, number 195, that's with Jay Massey. We talked about a whole bunch of different topics, and we got into how he bought and leased a cell phone tower. And he basically said it was about 50 square feet of space on the roof of an apartment building.
$1,200 a month. That's what I remember about it.
Yeah.
$1,200 a month for 50 square feet.
And he's selling it to a hedge fund manager, probably somebody like American Tower Corporation.
Yeah.
And he is selling it for crazy money compared to what he bought for. And like the return on investment on it was insane.
Yeah.
So I'll read the third one because I said it would. This is Simon Property Group in the United States, and they specialize in retail. So it's kind of interesting too that the three largest companies in the world right now are all kind of different in what they're specializing in, because you have diversified, cell towers, and retail. So you guys can check that article out again by going to the show notes on today's episode. All right, Steve.
My favorite. I love this next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm sure people have seen it. Most people have. There's a red dump truck in this video, and it is filled with trash.
Classic example of what we like to call landlord porn.
You just can't stop watching it.
So I'll run the play-by-play. The crashing noise that you hear is a tilt bed dump truck that is dumping the tenant's stuff that he left in the previous apartment on the doorstep of his new place. So he didn't clean out his apartment, left everything there, and the landlord is doing him a favor by dropping off all of his stuff for him. He's not being very gentle with it either. Oh my God. I mean, that is a house full of stuff. That's not just a couple of couches.
Yeah, you might recognize that that's not English being spoken. So this guy's name is Thomas Revaux. Is that how you think you say it?
Revaux.
Revaux.
Yep.
He's in France, and he took photos and posted them to his Facebook of how disgusting the tenants were. Then he did this stunt and recorded it and put it on Facebook, and it's actually still public. So if you look up his name, you can find his Facebook profile and find the original video. And I think it has like 8,000 shares, and it's almost like up to 1 million views.
Because
And
I know every landlord watches this and goes, I wish I can do that.
Mhm.
Oh, the satisfaction that would bring
Oh yeah.
to be able to dump somebody's stuff on their front lawn or the steps of their new place and say, here's all the stuff that you left for me to clean.
Of course, if you look in the comments, people are like, that stinks for that new landlord.
Yeah.
Because
true.
who knows? Maybe that tenant's like, that's not my stuff. I don't know who that was.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but yeah, you guys definitely got to check that video out. I will link to that. I'm sure I can find a YouTube embed that we can just throw right into the show notes. So if you haven't seen that yet, I know it was trending on Reddit. Steve and I are big. Is it Redditors? Is that the right term?
Yeah.
We Redditors.
Yeah.
I like the way that sounds. Redditors.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get over to a landlord hotline over here. So, you know what? I do this every time. I said I was going to write down the number ahead of time, Steve, so I could tell people what it is so they can call in. I always remember 716-218.
Yeah.
And then it's like 0330 or something. I don't know. It'll be in the show
0348.
notes. 0348. Yeah, call that number and see what happens.
Hello.
But we got a call here. I'm going to play that recording for you guys now, and then Steve and I are going to discuss.
We've owned a house for 10 years and rented it for a little over 2. Our tenant has been nothing but a nightmare the whole entire time. He changes things, fixes things, destroys things at will, never tells us anything. Drive-by realtors that are friends of ours tell us what they see. We just realized that he totally destroyed my entire front yard, like vandalized it like a sledgehammer to my patio that was there when he moved in. We need to get him to leave, but we're not sure how to proceed. So we don't want him destroying the house. The house is over a $400,000 house, 4 bedrooms, a private office, huge basement. He could cause a lot of damage. We want to avoid that if possible. We're trying to tell our realtor before we go in and have her look at the house, what we should do to protect ourselves in this situation. We only get one shot at this, and there's a lot of equity at stake. Do you have any advice?
Well, sorry to hear that, Tom.
I was
First
waiting
off.
for the thank you at the end. I thought he was going to say thank you.
No, you
No.
did nothing.
Come on, Tom.
I feel for Tom. I really do.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that jumps out at me, I don't know if you caught this, he mentions that he's getting a lot of information secondhand.
Yep.
Friends are driving by, drive-by realtors, which I mean is realtor friends that are driving by and
Yep.
seeing things. First thing that jumps out at me is this a good opportunity to talk about routine maintenance inspections.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
Especially if you got a $400,000 now. I'm getting the impression this was a home that he probably lived
For sure.
in, moved out of, rented it to somebody,
Yep.
let things get out of control, wasn't doing inspections.
Yeah. I mean, a 6-month inspection, if you build that into your lease and say, we're just going to come through, we're going to make sure that the batteries are working in the smoke detectors, and make sure that all the plumbing is okay, that everything is good to go. That's your opportunity to get in there and see what's going on and get your first whiff of something not being right as he's describing. That's your first chance to say, hey man, you can't blow this wall out, or you can't just knock down this patio. And then you start the process right there of either evicting him or making notes of things and saying you can't do anything further. But letting it go for 2 years is definitely going to add to the issue. But okay, that's in retrospect. Let's talk
Sure.
about what he can actually do.
Yeah, and we're not harping on Tom.
No,
I actually really appreciated this voicemail. I think he put things pretty well, and you can tell that he's concerned and he's trying to figure out, all right, here's where it's gotten to. How do we correct it now?
Right.
So I did actually reply back to him because I figured you'd give the same advice on cash for keys.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, what's your advice as far as cash for keys, and why would you recommend it maybe in this situation?
So cash for keys is when you, the landlord, are basically making a business decision. Make no mistake. This feels like you're giving in. This feels like you are losing in a lot of ways, but this is a business decision that must be made. And cash for keys means you are literally paying them to get out of your life, to turn back over the keys and tell them to leave. So in this case, Tom might present the situation to the tenant and say, listen, I don't like what you've been doing with the property. I cannot stand by and watch you destroy things like the patio and things like that. I don't want to go through the eviction process because that's going to remain on your record for at least 7 years.
I think that's a good point to bring that up.
Yeah.
So it's not, there's a lot of renters that probably aren't even familiar with what an eviction record is if they've never been evicted before.
Yeah, you got to paint it out to them like, listen, you want to avoid this because once that happens,
it's hard to find housing after that.
It's hard to find housing and it's hard to have something like that removed. So let's avoid it. This needs to be win-win for everybody. So I'd like to present you with an opportunity. 30 days, you vacate the property. I'll do a final walkthrough with you. If everything is in the condition that it's in right now, not damaged any further, you're not going to kick any holes in the wall or flush your socks down the toilet.
I wouldn't say the flush your socks down the toilet. I feel like it's just going to give him an idea.
Yeah, right. He's like, oh, I never even thought of that. That's brilliant. Yeah. But you tell them, you vacate the property, I will pay you to leave. I will not only return any security deposit that you might have, if that's the case. I'll give you $500. I'll give you $1,000, whatever the market in that area. I don't know what he's paying for rent, but if he's paying
probably decently,
if he's paying
on a $1,000 property,
if he's paying $2,000 a month in rent, you don't want to offer him $500 to leave. But give him a decent amount of money that gives him some incentive to do the right thing and get out of there. And again, I know that this, to a lot of landlords, some landlords hate this idea and hate the idea that they're giving in and hate the idea that they're letting the tenant win because the tenant's getting paid to leave. Again, this is a business decision, and Tom is in no better scenario right now than to show exactly how this type of, strategy could really work to his benefit. Because let's say that he goes through the eviction process. What's that going to cost him in the end?
On average, about $3,500.
So $3,500 for the eviction. What kind of damage is going to be done to the property because that tenant is super upset that he's being evicted now? So not only are you dealing with further damages, you're dealing with the cost of the eviction, the loss of the rent. Why not try to minimize that? Cut the time down.
Well, it's like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. We were talking about priorities too.
Yeah.
It's like, how much is your time worth? Like, $3,500, but you also have to go to court. You have to deal with the mental anguish of knowing that this is hanging over your head and when is this going to be resolved. And I feel like I've heard you say this quite a few times that pride can be pretty expensive.
Very expensive.
So I feel like there's a lot of landlords that are like, I'd never do cash or keys. And it's like, well, that's great. You're going to have, maybe 2 months of just mental anguish and worrying about some person that could have been out of your life 2 months ago.
And I can tell you this from talking to a lot of landlords and experience, the number one pushback that I hear, and I know we hear in a lot of the groups and stuff, whenever you talk about cash for keys, is landlords will say that's sending the wrong message. It's conditioning other tenants that you might have that think I can destroy the place and end up getting paid to leave. It's a valid argument. I don't dispute that, but I can tell you firsthand, that doesn't happen. Nobody goes, oh, that guy was terrible and ripped down the patio.
There's a Cash or Keys Facebook group out there, and they'll be like, yeah, Steve White over at 123 Candy Lane. He'll pay you to leave if you smash holes in the walls.
Right. Matter of fact, most tenants, because we get calls a lot and live chats a lot and emails sometimes from tenants who find our Cash for Keys articles and think that it's some sort of government program and ask how they can apply. So trust me, it's not some well-known thing. This is what you do in extreme situations like this where you need to get that person out of there and you need to make a smart business decision with your money. Do you want to spend $10,000 in 3 months after the eviction, or do you want to spend $1,500 in 30 days and have them out as amicably as possible?
Yeah. And I guess I get so used to talking about landlord situations with tenants. I didn't realize that cash for keys is a viable option for banks when they foreclose on a property. So sometimes they'll foreclose on a property and the family or people that are living there, the banks will do a cash for keys scenario with the people living there. And from the research I've done, it's actually the numbers are a little bit higher because the banks, aren't as price sensitive. But I thought that was pretty interesting. If you are interested, I'll link to a Cash for Keys article that we have on our website that we actually just redid. So it's pretty thorough, and you can kind of learn all about Cash for Keys. And we have some comments from our Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group from people that they're kind of giving what they typically do in that situation, how much they'll give the tenant in the Cash for Keys scenario. And you'll see some comments of people who are like, I'd never do this too.
Yeah.
So, to each their own. It's not necessarily always the right play, but again, it's one of those things where it's like, how much time do you got?
Ask yourself, is it pride that's keeping you from doing it? If the answer is yes, seriously reconsider, because like I've always said, pride can get very expensive. If it's a matter of pride that's the reason why you don't want to do it, you're going to end up paying more in the long run.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that's helpful in your situation there, Tom. We appreciate the voicemail, and we wish you the best of luck.
Yeah.
And when you're placing those next tenants, we also do have a tenant screening guide on our website you can check out, because you might find a couple little tips through the process this time. Because I know for me, when I left my own property and then you're renting it out again, you're learning every time you run out. You get a little bit better every single time that you do a screening, every time you get new tenants. And it's always the toughest at the beginning, and it gets better from there if you're willing to stick with it. So hopefully that works out in the end for you. And we appreciate all the comments and questions we get in the Facebook group, on the blog, and also on the Landlord Hotline. And if you guys want to join us at any point, you can go to the Rent Prep for Landlords Facebook group. We always appreciate seeing your guys' questions inside of that group as well.
Cool.
All right. Until next week.
Yeah. See you later.